Hi everyone. I've procrastinated this update video for way too long. I've been having too much fun updating PatternMaker Pro, and I've started another endeavor. More about that in a little bit. So let's start with the updates since the last video I did in February. Unfortunately, I did encounter a few bugs, and those have been fixed along the way. So let's talk about the added features. The first new addition is the Calculate Bust Dart tool, and you'll find that here on the main menu under Darts. It's right there, it's the first one. So in the US, our drafting books generally draft a standard B cup size and then use slash and spread after the draft to upsize for the cup. And this approach that I've integrated here is European, and it allows you to specify the cup volume directly into the original draft. And this means that you're not having to make individual changes to your drafts after they're done. And this works really great for recalling for memorized drafts because it's part of the process. It's not something you have to do afterwards. So I want to take a few moments and show you exactly how this works because I just think this is the way it should be. I'm really surprised that we don't do this more in our drafting books, but you can see I have a standard draft for a front bodice, and I've got the shoulder already here and some designated lines for the armhole and the bust and such. And here is my bust apex point, and I've created the first leg point, the first dart leg point here. And this would be the center front at the waist right here. So what this tool does is it calculates measurements and then it adds these specific values to the measurement set. So then they're available as you're drafting. So let's do that. I've got my Susan model selected here, and we'll go up and just choose Calculate Bust Dart. And I'm going to pick Susan here on the available sets. So now it wants to know what the full bust value is. And I can just use the list like you would for anything else, and I'll come down her here, and it wants the full bust, so be careful about that. Don't pick your front. I'm going to choose bust circumference right here and calculate that, and now it wants the high bust. This would be the measurement over the bust line, kind of the chest for a model that has breasts. So my high bust in this case in Susan's set is referred to as over bust. And you'll see that I don't have a total. I have the front and the back, but that's no problem. I'll pick the front, add a plus sign, and now I will put the back on there and calculate. So you can see that her difference is about 78 millimeters. And now we can just continue. And it has calculated these values for us. And if we don't have to write them down, we can just save it to the set. So just to confirm, I'll come back up here and let's look at our measurements. And here you can see we've got the bust dart vertical drop and the bust dart width already in the set. So now we can continue on with the draft, and I'll show you where you would use this. What we need to establish on our pattern here is the distance across the waistline. So we'll have part of the waist, the bust intake, and then the rest of the waist. So that's what we're doing with this process. We're going to use the circle at point tool, and we'll be measuring off of this dart leg. So the radius of our circle is going to be the waist width front divided by 2, because waist front obviously is all the way across. And then if we had waisties, we'd want to go ahead and add that. So let's do that. And waist ease is the total circumference, so we want to divide that by 4. And now we want to add our new measurement, the bust dart width. So now we know this measurement is the total distance of the waist and the bust dart intake all the way across. But we're starting to draw from this point here, so we need to subtract this that we've already established on the pattern. So I'm going to enclose this entire thing, and now I'm going to subtract the distance from here to here. And you can see the formula here explains exactly what's going on, and calculate. So now we've determined that the distance of our dart intake and the rest of the waist is 236 millimeters, which is about 9 1/4 inches. So we'll go ahead and look at the circle and then save it. So now we need to draw another circle to establish where our side point is going to be. And we want to use the same circle at point, and we're going to start at the mid-arm here. So in my case, I have a shoulder height measurement, which is from the tip of the shoulder down to the mid-arm, down to the side of the body. And so our radius is going to be the shoulder height. And I've already got 4 inches here, or 100 millimeters, so I need to subtract that. So there is my second measurement. From here to here, and anywhere here is my side length. So I'll save that. And now all I need to do is to find that intersection. So I can go up back to the points menu, find the point at intersection, select my 2 circles, and it found 2 points, obviously, but this is the only one we're really interested in. We can just save. And then I could delete this point. I'm going to do that real quick. So there is our side point. And if you've ever drafted from US books, you'll know that a lot of times this is placed arbitrarily. They'll give you some number to add to your waist, and they'll tell you to swing it up, or they'll tell you to swing it out, and it's quite arbitrary. It has nothing to do with the person that you're actually dealing with their real measurements. They're just drawing a B cup, and then they're going to have you fix it later. And this process did the entire thing. It took Susan's actual bust into account when it created this side point. So you'll see how high this came up, and there's a reason for that. So now let's go ahead and create the second dart leg here. So we'll use the point on vector tool, and we're going to select the dart leg that we already have that we're going to measure from, and the vector is our new side point over here. And now we're going to use our new measurement, the bust dart width, and there is the bust point. So when we go ahead and register this dart, obviously it'll equalize the legs of the dart so that they will sew properly. But this bust dart is unique to her for her cup size, basically. It's already been calculated. The side point has already been swung out the appropriate amount. So let's just confirm that this actually did what it was supposed to do. I'm going to come up to the utilities. I'm going to measure from here to here, which is 94.45, and now from here to here, 144.8, So if we add those two up, that's 239.25 millimeters, which is about 9.4 inches. So if we come up here to Susan's measurements and look at the waist front, 478.5 divided by 2 is the 239 that we calculated. So this will fit her perfectly. This is her waist, and this allowance, the dart intake, is perfect for the size of her bust. Now the next thing that we want to do is use the second measurement that the tool came up with, and that was to drop this center waist point. So we can do this a couple of ways, and this is just whatever you like to do. If you like your points left so that you have references later, then go ahead and create a new point. If you're okay and confident with what you're doing, you can just use the move point tool. But I'm going to go ahead and just create a different one. So there's the center front waist, and we want to drop it by that bust vertical drop value that was calculated. So we can preview that, and you can see it's just a tiny amount, and I'll go ahead and save it. But what this does, it elongates that center front so that her shirts don't pull up because she has a larger bust. And the neat thing about using the tool to create those measurements is that it's completely possible that this value is 0. For instance, in my case, it calculates to 0. I don't need any additional length down the center front. And so if this draft is memorized and recalled with my measurements, it creates this point with a value of 0. It's right on top of the old one. So it doesn't interfere with the draft in any way. It won't error out. It'll run. It'll still be correct. And then you can reuse your pattern for multiple people, regardless of what size bust they might have. And I should note, too, that in some cases, the B cup might be a little large for someone. And if you're doing it this way, it would be reduced and it would be a little smaller. And what I really like is that this is going to facilitate an exceptional fit without later pattern adjustments. And the side point was not drawn based on an arbitrary amount. Arbitrary amounts are notorious in U.S. drafting books. For example, one of the most popular books, Patternmaking for Fashion Design by Armstrong, is taught in college courses. It's a really expensive book. And that's exactly what they've got you doing, is just adding an amount and then going back and fixing it. So everything is taken into account when this draft is done this way, and I really encourage you to give it a try. So let's move on to some other updates. So if you take a look up here in the Help menu on the Contact PatternMaker Pro, which I'm not going to click on, now when you open that, it gives you my personal email address. And I've done that so that you have a direct line to me if you believe that the program is malfunctioning or you want a new feature. It just gives you more of a priority than going to the contact form on the website. So the next update is a direct feature request from one of our users. And you'll find it on the Finish menu. So we just go up here and select the import logo, and you can click anywhere on your pattern to place it. Click again to move around, and then select the logo file. And they can be PNGs, JPEGs, either extension of a JPEG. And then once it's in, you can change the scaling on it. If your logo's huge for whatever reason, you can make it the appropriate size and then just save it. Now I should mention that this is not memorized. So this is something you're going to do after your patterns are recalled and you're just doing the final, making them pretty for your buyers. So the next feature is actually something I came up with for myself. When I do patterns, a lot of times I choose different formulas, and then when the pattern is printed out, I have no idea what I used. And this is particularly true when you're in the process of developing a new design. And I thought it would be really handy to have the ability to put the text of your formula and the value that was calculated right on the pattern. So that's also up here on the same menu. You just hit Add Text Formula at Point. And again, you have the free placement anywhere you want. And now we can just add whatever we want. So I'm going to put the ankle, and then I'm going to add a distance. And then I can preview it, and you can see that it says what formula I used and the value that was calculated. This isn't working how I intended. It shouldn't say the point names, IDs like this. It should say the description that you've given them. So I will be fixing that. That's how things work in programming. But there's the line of text and the value that was used. You have all of the text formatting options over here for resizing or moving it any way you want. So you might find that handy after I fix it. The next series of updates came from a very advanced pattern draft. One of our PatternMaker Pro users gifted me the Müller Sohn's Fundamental Menswear drafting book. Here's the website for it if you're interested, if you want to look it up for yourself. So I'd heard of this method, but I had never actually tried it. And what I had heard was that it is advanced, and boy, that's no joke. I went through this draft, and it took over 140 steps to get it to this point. And this is the basic suit jacket block. Now, one thing I am very proud to say is that I was able to memorize the entire drafting process and recall it perfectly. And it was a massive test for the program, and it handled it great. So I'm really happy about that. So in the process of creating this, I actually ended up adding 2 new tools and modifying another one to better accommodate the process. So if you follow this drafting method, you'll find these really helpful. So I'm going to go back to a test here. I'm not going to mess up that draft that I spent so much time making. So the first change is on the add point perpendicular up here. You would just select an origin and then the vector point, and then the distance off the origin. So I'm in inches now. So there is a perfect right angle. That's what this tool does. And the difference is right here. Before, you would just save the point, and then if you wanted a line, you had to draw it. And I've made it a little quicker and allowed you to do that so that automatically creates a line. A new tool that I created for this is called the Square to Point tool, and it's off the Points menu. So you'll select the point that is the projection point, which in this case I'm going to use this one. And now it wants the line to square to. I'm going to use this one. And it has created the point here at the line and connected the 2 points. Now it did not split this line. This line is still one piece. This one is just sitting on top of it, just in case you need to know that. But this is something that came up quite a few times in the drafting, is that he uses a lot of right angles. So you need to be able to do these quickly off of arbitrary points that might be somewhere else. And you'll note that this line is not horizontal, so it's going to work regardless of the vector of the line. So the last upgrade associated with the Müller draft is the ability to lengthen a curve. So all you need to do is come up here on the curves menu, and it's a new one right here, lengthen curve, and select the curve that you want to lengthen. And now the ends are colored different colors, so you have a green end point and a blue start point, and you need to say where you want to lengthen it at. Do you want to lengthen it over here or down here? So I'm going to go with the green one, and then the distance that you want to lengthen. So I'll just do 3 inches in this case. And there's the line has been lengthened. So what has happened is PatternMaker Pro sampled the final segments of the original curve to calculate the direction and curvature of the extension, and it does a pretty good job of it. It doesn't just create a straight line, it's really trying to follow the vector that was established on the original curve. So the original curve is not altered in any way. This is literally a new polyline, this extension, and it's also not a true curve. If I save it, you'll see that it doesn't have any curve points, so it can't be altered after the fact. So if you need to change this down the road for some reason, just go ahead and draw a new curve using these points, and then you can adjust the curve point to follow the line, and then of course you can change it from there. So my latest distraction is So Authentic, and it's all about machine embroidery. That's what it is, but I'm going to use PatternMaker Pro for all of the patterns. And if you want to check it out, I'd really appreciate your interest. I'll leave a link in the video description to the So Authentic YouTube channel, and you can see what's going on there. It's really a lot of fun. So the adventure has resulted in one new PatternMaker Pro tool and one upgraded one. So the new tool is called the reference grid. So what I needed was a way to lay out my embroidery as it would be done in a pattern format, so I could use it as a template for putting the fabric on my embroidery machine. And this is enormous. This is a full shirt completely laid out. This is 3 yards long and 57 inches wide, to give you some idea. That's why it's so tiny. But I'll zoom up here, and you can see, I'll go to the layers menu, and you can see all these reference grids. And that's what the new tool does. It allows you to lay out grids between points as you specify. And so I was able to lay out all these different points where I wanted the embroidery to go. I can turn off the embroidery, and now you can see these points very clearly. And these were all done automatically with the tool. And this tool is located on the utilities menu. It's down here on the end, reference grid. And you'll select the corners of a box shape, if you will, and then you would want to designate the spacing. So I'm going to let you check out the manual rather than really going into it, because it is a very specific use case. So all of these circles are motifs, they're 2.5 inches, and then these rectangles are bands that are also embroidered motifs. And one of the things that I added, because it didn't exist, for the circles it was easy. I had a add circle at point. So I was able to go through and select all the points that I wanted, and then in one quick tool use have all my circles. So that was super quick. But unfortunately, we didn't have a rectangle at point tool at the time. All we had was the add rectangle, where you just click anywhere you want. So this is the new one, add rectangle at point, and it just allows you to choose a point or multiples. In this case, I chose all of these at one time, and then just make the rectangle. And you can see that whether you're doing embroidery or any other embellishment, this makes really quick work of laying out exactly how you want it on the fabric, and then you can pass that information on to your people who are sewing, and they know exactly where the placement where you intended it to be. So you might find that useful. So this concludes all of the upgrades that I've made since the last video, and I keep coming up with lots of new features to add to the program. And I have no problem adding stuff, I just have a real problem of telling you that I've done it. So I'm going to try to do better in the future. So as of today, I want to point out that if you look at PatternMaker Pro Info, it'll show you the version, and all these updates you need to have version 35, so make sure you're on the correct version or some of these might be missing. And of course the demo has the latest update as well for those of you who are just thinking about buying the program, so you'll have all these tools to play with. So I want to thank all of you in the community that are providing me with your feedback and suggestions. Some of these things are all you're doing, and I think it's super fun. The program just gets better because of the input from all of you and also me personally using the program. That I think is a huge advantage that PatternMaker Pro has, is that because I'm the one that does all the programming and I use it. So everything works. It works the way it needs to work. It's not just being handed off to a programmer like so many of these programs. They're not written by people who draft. And that really sets PatternMaker Pro apart. I think you'll realize that real quickly. And also, when someone says, oh, we need to add this, I understand completely what they're talking about. It makes perfect sense. So it's really easy for me to do. So if you know anybody who is into sewing, thinking about drafting maybe, please send them a link to the demo page, show them my videos, see if it's something that they might be interested in. I know that the younger generation is really starting to sew again. It's fantastic to see. So I want to thank you for your time today, and I will see you again much sooner.